Hey, this is Pamela Schneider. I'm the retail editor for Blue Book Services, and this is the Produce Reporter Week in Review. First of all, we have to get it out of the way. The Chiefs won.
I think this is the first time since at least a week ago I'm not wearing red and some kind of Chiefs logo. So we'll bask in this for a little while.
Yep. It was a really great game. So that was pretty awesome. Chiefs won again, won in 2020. And in 2020, what happened? Wait, I'm not gonna go there. I'm not gonna blame it on the Chiefs.
They did win in the beginning of February of 2020, and then everything changed. But what hasn't changed is the Chiefs going to the AFC title game.
We are going to talk about inflation and particularly consumer perspective and consumer perception of inflation, because we're being told numbers and consumers are being like, no, that's not how I'm looking at it in my bank account and in my home. And first of all, we had some new research from Dunnhumby. It's a regular survey that they've been doing, and it showed that 46% of consumers believe grocery stores increased their profits in the last year. It's a pretty negative perception of grocery stores. They think that grocery stores have a 35.2% net profit margin. And a grocery store would be like, I love that, because that's actually 14 times higher than reality. Most grocery stores in America hover around 2%. Some are more profitable, some are less profitable, depending on their model and what they're selling and where they are. Rural and independent stores typically have less of a big buying power, so their margins are a lot thinner. I don't know what retail can do to change that perception, or if they do need to change that perception, but I feel like when people are going to take to the streets waving their baguettes, they better not be coming for the grocery stores, because it's not their fault.
I think we as an industry and retail too have to keep in mind that consumers are hurting and they're angry that everything costs more and they need someone to blame. And it's easy to blame the grocery store because that's who they interact with. It's not so easy to point out who it is to blame. They do have to figure out a way to explain that it's not them. But yeah, consumer, well, who's getting rich off all this inflation? It's not me. I'm losing money.
Right.
And the feeling, the anger and the hurt and the knowing it's hurting your personal lifestyle, that's real. And their blame is misplaced. But another thing is we keep seeing all these government numbers, and it'll say like 11% year over year inflation. And in this survey, consumers said that they think food at home inflation is 24%. So more than twice what the government is saying. I think the consumer perception is probably closer to reality, because it's hard to conceptualize me buying food now versus January 2020. But it's a lot easier to think back to when Pat Mahomes was a wee youth winning his first Super Bowl in January or February 2020. And prices legitimately are up 25 to 50% over that time for the same stuff or less stuff. And that's what people are feeling. And that's a real thing. And that just makes so many of our arguments about value propositions that's meaningful to consumers. That means something, that hits them where it matters.
And consumers aren't crazy. If you look at this map that Dunnhumby sent, it's got this big dark area on some of the states that believe that inflation is highest. And in Oklahoma, they think that inflation is more than 32% higher than it was. The thing is that we also have Anna Marie's report for the International Fresh Produce Association, and in her inflation insights right there, I'm looking at, compared with January 2020, prices across all food and beverage are up 30.3%. So they're not crazy. It's just not year over year up that much. It is compared to January 2020. And don't forget our French shrinkflation, because that is starting to hit a lot of people. It hit me. It hit me. The
Oh
milk
no. It
milk that I
looks
bought.
skinny. I can see it from here.
This used to be a half a gallon, 2 half gallons connected together for a reasonable price that I bought at Costco. My kids like this, whatever. It's apparently the best recovery drink for sports, by the way, is chocolate milk. And that's actually 1.5 or 52 ounces, 52 fluid ounces instead of 64. And it's just some random number because that's not a real number for milk. Milk is supposed to be a quart or a half gallon or whatever, or even I would take a liter.
No,
That's
mind your
ridiculous.
P's and Q's.
If it's a liter, it's going to be in a bag and then be in Canada. So we're not crazy. We're paying more and getting less. And it's just very confusing when we look at year over year numbers versus the before times. Basically, we're all remembering back in 2020 or 2019 when we were, this 2 half gallons of this was $6.99 at Costco, and now it is $9, and I'm not even getting the same amount. I remember, I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
So what can
But
we
there's
do?
good news. There's good news in the produce category because according to these numbers, produce is only up 5.6% year over year price wise. And fruit is a mere 2.2%. Vegetables is much higher at 8.9%. But produce, the inflation is definitely coming down, and there's always been some seasonality to it, and certain crops take off and certain others don't. But I think the industry is probably doing a little bit better job of taking some of those costs out to what consumers see.
Yeah, to what consumers sees, that doesn't mean that we're talking from the consumer's perspective, that for produce is actually quite a decent value, and we haven't seen a lot of inflation. That doesn't mean that the rest of the value chain isn't challenging for growers, shippers, transport, packaging, all that other part of it. All of that is going up, and somebody's eating the cost somewhere. And we'll probably hear from them when we say that, oh, the great news is the produce isn't higher priced.
No, we are talking about from the consumer's perspective, of course. That's what we're talking about. Before we move on from Anne Marie's report, I thought the segment on fresh losing market share to frozen and some other shelf stable was really interesting because I think it shows that consumers are looking for ways to save, even if it's not necessarily saving them as much as they think they might be. I mean,
Right.
it's not a huge drop. The share of dollars in produce, fresh went from 79.2% of the total overall last year to 77.8. So it dropped a little more than a percentage point, and frozen gained more than that much. But the inflation in frozen is significantly higher than it is in fresh.
Yes, yeah, the inflation in frozen and shelf stable, which would be canned, and shelf stable, it's 22%. And the increase in price is 4.7% for the fresh produce department. That's a huge difference. But there is a really good reason, I think, from my perspective and from the consumer's perspective, is that I feel like people feel safe buying shelf stable or frozen fruits and vegetables. And I told you when we were warming up for this that I've got a guilty secret. I always buy frozen spinach unless I'm making a salad. But when I'm going to throw some spinach in my eggs and feta for breakfast, it's always coming out of a bag in the freezer because I am a terrible manager of clamshells of random leaves. I end up wasting half of them every time I buy them. But I would rather pay more for a salad kit that has all the ingredients and makes it tasty without me having to think than pay less for a giant clamshell and not actually make anything with it.
Because you'll eat it all.
Yes, because we know we'll eat it all. It's the same thing that goes for me for buying value-added broccoli. I always buy it in a bag from Costco because I know that my family will eat all of it and I don't have to sit there and spend 10 minutes, cleaning and cutting and whatever. Same thing with Brussels sprouts. I just have conditioned myself to buy them already washed and prepped and ready to go. And I may pay a little bit more for it but I'm going to waste less of it. And I feel like people take that, maybe even with fewer cooking skills, they take that to the freezer or they take that to a can, and then they have the safety of not having to worry about throwing it away.
So does that mean you would argue in favor of shrinkflation as long as it's clearly explained to consumers that it's going on? You'll waste less if you buy less, and maybe it costs a little less.
If they tell me why they made it smaller, if somebody could market to me and say, hey, guess what? This is an easier to hold, even though I have giant man hands. This is easier to hold and pour. Your kids are going to spill less of it because they can hold it easier. Then maybe I would be less salty about it. But right now I'm just salty about it because I feel like the whole thing looks exactly the same. It just lost 15 pounds. You know, if there was an attempt to explain to me why it's smaller, then I would be less salty.
So if produce companies are going to offer smaller packages, they should be upfront about it.
They should. I think everybody should. If you're going to make a package smaller, then you need to go, hey, we're going to make this a better value for you. Hey, you're going to waste less for you, or we've done this for you. Something needs to be explained. Otherwise, you're going to get dragged on social media. And let me tell you, some of these TikTok videos go pretty far. And people are quick to cancel you on TikTok if you throw something out there that they don't agree with. The thing you want to do is get dragged on TikTok for trying to sneak one by on consumers by making a smaller bottle and charging 50% more for it.
And you would know because you're an emerging influencer on.
Yes. My Super Bowl avocado videos went pretty far. Every time I looked at the app, I had 100 new followers. So that was actually pretty exciting for me. And it's exciting times for the produce industry. Richard Smalley wrote a column this week about the advent of live streaming and selling via live streaming. And this is something that was introduced to us, I want to say 2019, at one of the State of the Union or State of the Industry addresses that PMA had back in the day. Talking about TikTok. And at the time, and this is something that I've talked about before, where there's farmers out in the field selling like pomegranates or something like that to people in China. And it's like, is that going to work? I don't know if that's going to work in the US, but almost every single one of these influencers on TikTok has a link tree where you can link out and buy the things that they're using. And they're going to get caught. A lot of these people that are using influenced products aren't exactly following a lot of the rules that you have to follow, as far as advertising and promotion and things like that. And I'm sure savvy marketers would make sure that they're, dotting all the I's and crossing all the T's on this. But they're making money through affiliate marketing. But a retailer today, just this week, launched a new live stream platform where they're going to offer it to their vendors, and the photo that they sent was of floral. So they're doing the retail media network, and the things that you see the chef preparing, you can buy it right there at the fresh market. So it's happening. It's starting to move into commercial space here in the US,
which is what we were waiting for.
And we'll see how long it lasts before everyone jumps ship and moves to the next social media platform. But right. From what we've seen, it's actually a very slow progression, because I can remember getting started in the produce industry, and that was when Facebook was just getting started. And now Facebook is populated by my mom and my grandma and people her age, and they're keeping it alive and well. So we've got at least another 20 years before my grandma gets on TikTok. And one of the things I've noticed is that video has gone from, it went from everything has to be short. And then YouTube went, oh no, we have no limits. As long as you want, people will watch it. And on TikTok, it has to be like, once you get too long, if you have to do a second part, people are like, it has to be really good, juicy, good stuff for it to be a multi-part. And people are referring out to their YouTube pages. So if you want more information on this, go to my YouTube page, because you have to be multi-channel, because you can get blocked or banned or whatever on any one of these at any time. If you get a bunch of people who are trolling you, they'll mass report you, and you have to have your stuff on a different platform. So none of the platforms are going to go away. Well, on that note, That's it for the Produce Reporter Week in Review. If you are not getting the Produce Reporter newsletter, you need to go to producebluebook.com and sign up. And one of the things